In this episode, the Psychic Private Eyes investigate a 50-year-old disappearance that shocked the Scottish town of Coatbridge.
Others would have looked at her after she died and as she died.
The psychics follow in the footsteps of a child killer and serial abuser as they attempt to locate the body of Moira Anderson, who vanished on a bitter February evening in 1957.
I keep wanting to get off the bus and I want to get away.
Sandra Brown is tortured by the belief that her father was responsible for Moira's disappearance. She has tirelessly campaigned for the case to be reopened.
A lot of people feel it's now the end of the road because 50 years is approaching. Moira's anniversary will be the 23rd of February 2007. But about 18 months ago, the local MP for the area, Tom Clark, had an experience with a family where he said to me, "Have you considered bringing in a top, very reputable UK medium?" And I said I would give it some thought. I'm delighted that people of the stature and reputation of Colin Fry and Tony Stockwell, that they're interested in looking at this case.
Colin Fry invites Sandra to a one-to-one reading, and TJ Higgs examines an image of Moira to focus her mind while revealing more facts. As in all their investigations, the Psychic Private Eyes have been given no details regarding the case.
First of all, I'm going to say, Sandra, I feel that you're going to be quite easy to work with. You're a pretty tough cookie. That means that you will handle things relatively well, no matter what comes up. So I feel quite comfortable working with you. I'm told to talk about scars, both physical and emotional.
It's making me feel very lightheaded now. I'm very dizzy. Still getting that feeling, where are you? Where are you?
Would you be able to understand why you had to give two different accounts of events that transpired, but they were both correct?
Yeah.
It's a strange thing for me to be shown. Is there some importance to a one-way railway ticket?
A one-way railway ticket? It's not meaningful to me, I don't think.
I'm not going to forget it. I'm going to put it on hold for a moment. I'm also seeing a garage, or garages.
Yep. It's relevant, yep.
I get the feeling of hands now grabbing hold of my hands and wanting to lead me past this garage or garages. She should have really nice fingernails, but they are torn and broken. Have you dreamt about this child?
Oh, yes.
Constantly?
This child's, I would say, I don't want to use the word haunted because I don't feel...
You don't feel
I don't
haunted
feel haunted by it, but I do feel there's a very strong connection, and I feel she's constantly come to me.
No earthly body has ever been found.
You're right.
I was taken on a one-way journey.
A one-way journey, not a train, a bus.
It was a bus ticket.
It was a bus ticket.
Fine, okay, I apologise then. I was taken on a one-way journey.
Yep.
I just keep hearing bib-bib in my mind, as if somebody's bibbing their horn, and people are taking notice as I'm driving down the street. And the steering wheel is big, it's like a school bus where everyone's going to get on. Like I'm going to pull up and I'm going to bib, so I'm letting people know that I'm coming because there's children getting on this bus. Because he's smiling at them. He's very friendly and very funny. And he's driving his bus. She gets on his bus.
I was taken on a one-way journey.
Yep.
That's why everyone knows him. That's why everyone in the town knows him. And that's how he gets close to children. Because they all know him as a bus driver. And he makes jokes and he's funny. she gets on his bus. And that's why she trusted him.
You have exposed so many things that so many people were just like hushed up.
Absolutely.
Just shut up, don't talk about it. I see this child's fingernails torn.
Yep.
Torn fingernails. And I see her in my mind as a young woman, or a woman, and I see her taking me down past these lockups or these garages.
Yeah.
As we go down the road from where these lockups are, the co-op store, particularly the butchery part of it, that's important.
That's where she was going, to that shop.
Somewhere around there as well, there's a public convenience. Someone would write a meeting time on the wall in the top left-hand corner. And a series of men would go in and they would check this meeting time.
It's almost like lots of different stories, you know, like a jigsaw, lots of different pieces of jumble.
There is a man who seems to have disappeared off the face of the earth. And nobody quite knows where he is, where he's gone, and the importance of that. This man not been. Nobody seems to think, or nobody officially seems to think that that's terribly important. I have to actually say that you have enormous, enormous compassion for this child. But she has placed a scar on your life.
But I don't hold her responsible for that.
A victim of a victim.
Yes.
Your mother was terribly scarred by this as well.
Very much so. Horribly, horribly treated and scarred by it.
You have begun your own process of healing. And the only way that you've been able to do that is to be this child's champion.
Yes.
I can only imagine that there have been times so far that you have just been told, don't go any further with this. You really don't want to go any further with this. But I have to actually say, yes, you do want to go further with this.
Yep.
What you exposed may only be absolutely part of the story.
Oh, yes.
Because I'm talking about a man that should be close to you and your mother, and in some way has some responsibility for this child's passing. And that in itself is horrific. Having to accept that someone that was close to you and your mum may well have been responsible for this girl's death. I actually believe that even though there was only one child that was died, there was a systematic abuse of children going on.
But he'd have more than one child, this man. Imagine sitting here and having to feel what she went through. He's like, I can't speak because I don't want to say it because I don't want her family to hear it.
This is one of the most sinister readings that I think I've ever done. Thank you so much for being so brave. It's, you know, I have to actually say that, you know, that this world needs people that are brave as you to actually recognise things like this. Well done.
Colin and TJ have picked up sinister messages from the spirit world. Will they have any bearing on the facts of the case? Coming up, we find out why Sandra believes she is responsible for Moira's passing.
I did feel guilty for some time. There was a real sense of betrayal.
And Tony Stockwell examines a broken bottle, which is believed to have a connection to the killer.
There's one primary person and others aware. Others would have looked at her after she died and as she died.
The psychic private eyes are looking into the case of Moira Anderson, who disappeared in February 1957. To this day, no body has been found.
I was taken on a one-way journey.
Yep.
Sandra Brown was a young girl when Moira vanished. But years later, at her grandmother's funeral, her father revealed a shocking secret.
He basically said that he'd been the last person to see Moira. I suddenly felt a huge wave of concern. Coatbridge was a typical working class town. The nickname was the Iron Borough. It was not the cleanest place to stay because the smog was bad, but it was a happy place to play, and I did have very good memories of going to school and childhood friends.
This was a town of about 50,000 people. Very, very working class, very industrial, depending on steel and coal and engineering.
Coatbridge felt a safe place for children to be. The only time your parents took you anywhere, really, was to school on your first day. After that, you didn't see any parents round the school gates.
Certainly something like this was very, very unusual, and I do remember the impact on the town. The feeling of fear, frankly, that there was. There was just a great, great sadness, and just the terrible feeling that Moira had gone missing forever, and that this was still a great mystery.
Tony flies to Glasgow and is presented with a broken bottle that Sandra strongly believes is connected to the case. Tony analyses the bottle using a process called psychometry. If the object was connected to Moira, he will pick up on energy trails embedded within.
Right, there's some smaller pieces of glass in the bag, but I think I'll just work with this.
Moira Anderson was the middle of three girls, a family that lived a few streets away from us, but in a more affluent area because it was very close to the public park. She was a tomboy, a bit like myself, played marbles, could beat all the boys, very popular, very pretty little girl, very open, maybe too open and too trusting.
She's fair-haired, I believe, and she's got dimples in her cheeks, longish fair hair on her shoulders. Her mother's now passed to the spirit world because she talks about being with her mum now, and her mum coming to find her.
Moira had been asked by her mum to pop round to her grandmother's. Her uncle Jim was cooking some fish for her grandmother's tea just to tempt her because she'd been so ill, and Moira was sent to the local co-op. There are two co-ops. Maybe if she'd gone to the other one, this wouldn't have happened. If she'd taken her grandmother's dog, it wouldn't have happened.
She didn't pass instantly, that's clear enough. There's a feeling of either her being tortured or humiliated before she passes. The feelings I have with this glass are altogether a bit jangled, really, and not very clear. I just think it's a bit odd I should be given this glass. It just feels like it's a bit like a red herring in some way.
Moira Anderson disappeared like a spot of petrol on a pavement. It's like she evaporated. She became known as kind of Little Red Riding Hood because here was this child who'd been sent to do with her grandmother for a piece of shopping who just was never seen again. And you're talking about a journey of just 500 yards. It was never discussed. When it was discussed, it was in very hushed tones. But nobody ever seemed to really ask, what happened to this child? Where did she go? Who took her? Why hasn't there ever been an upgrade of her case from a missing persons to a murdered person?
I do strongly believe that she's murdered and that she's lost her life. The attack that she sustained is sexually motivated, that's clear.
Nobody ever thought for a moment, could this have been the work of a paedophile or a paedophile ring?
There's one primary person and others aware. Others would have looked at her after she died, and as she died, that's weird, isn't it? And help in the way that she's disposed of, that's probably better. Help in the way that she's disposed of. She's given me a feeling here that one of the men that's responsible for taking her life is an adult, mature man, maybe 40, years of age, thick-set, big hands, dark hair. His family's still alive. His family is still living on the earth.
My father's behaviour felt wrong to me, although I couldn't really put a handle on it. Something just felt inappropriate and wrong, and I didn't feel safe around him, and I think I realised that my friends were not safe around him either. One of the hardest moments, I think, for me in my childhood, my friends were in my father's car. I came back to the car with ice creams that were running up my arms, and I couldn't get into our car because the doors were locked, the windows were steamed up, and all I could see when I looked through the windows was underwear, and I just knew that something was very, very wrong. But my abiding memory of that day is a deep, deep sense of anger and resentment and fear, because it was like everything in my world was melting away as well. But as I say, going home and telling my mother, and she wouldn't believe me and said, "Stop telling lies." And that's one of the very few occasions that my mum actually hit me. And I think I know now that was to knock these thoughts that I was voicing, was to knock them out of my head. It was so dangerous what I was saying. She couldn't afford to hear this. Nobody wants to confront that you have somebody in your midst that really is acting in the most evil and devious way towards children.
The young girl was murdered by a man she trusted, a man that she would have felt comfortable with, a man that was known by her family, and a man that would have looked her family in the eye. So it's like he lived with these crimes for some long years. And I wonder if he tried to confess them also before he died, as a sense of wanting to purge himself of the pain that he'd caused.
Moira disappeared in 1957, and occasionally I would think of her and her family, but I had no reason to ever believe I would have information to take to the police till 1992, when my father came to his mother's funeral, and we had a conversation that led to him linking himself to Moira's disappearance. He basically said that he'd been the last person to see Moira, that she'd got on his bus. And I think because of some of the memories I had from childhood, I suddenly felt a huge wave of concern.
I keep seeing myself in navy blue. There's a feeling here of dark clothes on me as I'm speaking, like a navy blue coat. A driver of some description.
It was very hard, but 2 or 3 weeks after that, I made the decision that I had to speak to the police. I didn't think I could forget the conversation that we'd had. I think it really points to the fact that my father was a lifelong paedophile, and I do believe he was part of a ring, but it took me a long time to be able to use words like abducted, murdered, raped, paedophile. All those words are still very, very hard to say, but I think what I had to confront was, here was a man that had brought me into the world, and it's a terrible thing to suspect them of abducting a child. A lot of the older members of the family, some have died saying, "I don't know how you could have done this, because this was still your own father." Okay, you maybe have dropped off some people's Christmas card list, but at the end of the day, I've had to stick to my own convictions and stick with my own integrity.
I get the feeling with this bottle that there's chloroform in this bottle that would have subdued his victim as that she may not scream. And you know, also I think he got it from a dentist. I think it's a dentist connection with that. So I think that I'm abducted maybe around 4 o'clock, 4 or 5 o'clock in the late afternoon, that time. Because it's getting dark, becoming dark, it's time to go home. She's been buried because she talks about being under the earth, in the earth. And I know that she's in a place that's tree-lined road, trees either side, but looking very long down like a long avenue. That's important. That place is important. That's important. I think it's important also to, not just where she's laid to rest, but also where her abductor, those that were responsible for her death, had worked, connected, been. The end of a town or the furthest part of a village, something like on the outskirts. I kind of think she's tucked in and under and buried within.
If a parent is behaving inappropriately towards other children, you have the real conflict between trust in a parent and distrust of adult behaviour that just doesn't look right. It sounds a strange thing for a wee girl to be doing, but I found ways of trying to keep my friends away from my father. I think I was rescuing other children, and maybe one of the reasons that I have championed Moira Anderson and won't allow her to be forgotten is, sadly, she was a child who couldn't be rescued.
Tony has visualised a location with planted gardens near a church. Can it be one of the local churches in Coatbridge? Coming up, TJ Higgs investigates further by following Moira's final bus journey.
And I just feel like I'm restricted and it's cold and I'm being pushed down now. I'm being pushed down on an aisle.
And Sandra explains why she is obsessed with trying to locate where the body was buried.
You know, if you believe that bit in the Bible that says, you know, about the 99 lambs, but one goes missing, they deserve to be looked for.
Sandra Brown believes her father was behind the abduction and murder of Moira Anderson in 1957.
He basically said that he'd been the last person to see Moira, that she got on his bus.
The young girl was murdered by a man she trusted, a driver.
And that's how he gets close to children, because they all know him as a bus driver.
TJ has flown in to help with the investigation.
There have been times so far that you have just been told, don't go any further
Back
with
off.
this.
Back
You
off.
really don't want to go any further with this. And what you exposed may only be absolutely part of the story.
Oh, yes.
What we could never have predicted was one of my father's friends, another bus driver who was part of the paedophile ring, who left a confession in prison that really backs up a great deal of what I've said.
The co-op store, particularly the butchery part of it, that's important.
James Glogley, who trained as a butcher in the army and knew my father before working for Baxter's Buses, was a really respectable pillar of the community. He was caught on camera molesting a wee girl of 5 and was sent to Peterhead Prison for molesting a number of young girls.
Have more than one child, this man.
There was a systematic abuse of children going on.
Within a very short time of being in there, he realised he was extremely ill, and Janet, who is Moira Anderson's sister,
It's a J, but it's a Janet, Janice, Janet.
we wrote to him. Moira's sister decided he knew something. As I understand it, Jimmy Glogley in his confession refers to Moira having been abducted by my father, being abused at the terminus where the bus was going.
I'm also seeing a garage or garages.
Yep.
And then being further abused at the depot. 3 people were involved.
I'm kind of working with that idea of predominantly three attackers. And I think there's 2 other men waiting to sexually assault this young girl.
But my father placed Moira's wee panties, which he'd soaked in chloroform, over her head,
I get the feeling with this bottle that there's chloroform in this bottle.
and that the abuse went too far and this child could not be revived.
TJ will now trace the final moments of Moira's journey on that cold and fateful night. Some viewers may find her revelations disturbing.
I'm trying to pick up Moira's energy, and I know that the last place that she was seen would have been at her grandmother's house, which is behind me. And I'm trying to get a sense of Moira as I walk towards areas that she would have been well known in, or the streets that she would have walked, basically.
My name's Dr. Brian Venters. I've been working with the Moira Anderson Foundation for probably the past 4 years, helping to deal with people who've been abused. People have got ideas that paedophiles are inadequate individuals and that they fit a certain template, but that's not really the case. I mean, you can get paedophiles who are any profession or any job.
My father basically went on to Baxter's bus services, the local buses, ones that went to outlying areas. So Cliftonville, where Moira Anderson lived, was a very affluent area. Kirkwood, where the buses would end up, was really quite deserted, housing going on, fields, cemetery, pretty remote. I think because my father was quite a well-known figure, quite a tall and imposing man in a uniform with a peaked cap, he looked very much like a police officer. I think there was an element of trust in people with uniforms then that we know you can't always go by that today.
The fact is that individuals who want access to children will, by and large, put themselves in a position where they can get access to children.
And I know from the photo reading, I know that this man was the school bus driver, because that's what I was shown. I just feel very trusting. I don't feel as if I'm about to walk into any danger of any kind. I don't feel that she was the only young lady that was pretty much the only word I can think of to use is quite blunt, really, is abused. And unfortunately, it went too far for Moira. But there would have been other children in this community that were abused by this man, definitely.
The effect that an abuser has on a community, they will certainly be more protective towards the children than they had been before. They'll be worried about things. They want to know where their children are and what their children are doing, and create anxiety and disquiet, because people think, or like to think, that where they live is safe.
Moira had been asked by her older sister Janet, she'd been entrusted with a secret task, and that was to go and get a special card and a box of Black Magic chocolates, her mum's favourites. If the Co-op store in Laird Street was closed, which I believe it was, that would explain why Moira went on my father's bus.
I get a real feeling of agitation here, and I'm starting to feel very emotional with Moira as I'm standing outside this building.
I truly believe an opportunity presented itself to my father, and he had the trust of this little girl. He decided to, take that further, that opportunity. It was a one-way journey for her, right enough.
I keep seeing in my mind's eye, I'm standing here. I'm not here, round here. I'm round here, and then the doors open and I get on the bus. My initial feelings of being on the bus with Moira are, I don't get the sense of being panicked at all, but I do feel that she's very wary of him. I do feel that some of the children would have been wary of him, yet as far as she's concerned, she's on the bus, she's safe.
Well, about 80% of abusers are known to the child, either as a relative, babysitter, or a neighbour, or a family friend. Only about 20% are strangers. People can think that they're going to keep their children safe by telling them to watch for strangers, but children are naturally trusting, and we want them to be naturally trusting.
And I just keep having this vision in my mind of him looking at her. I can't feel that this journey is a planned journey, but he's keeping her going. We're going to go here. I'm going to